Okay, welcome back to episode 4 of an introduction to space engineers. I am Maxius Slight, and in this episode, we're going to cover K menu, production, and building blocks. So let's get started. Right, now, everything in as space engineers is made by placing blocks in different configurations. Each block requires a certain amount of component parts to build it. You're required to have said component parts in your inventory in order to build the blocks. So let's look at how you produce those component parts. You will require the following: a powered refining block and a powered assembler. Okay, so in the last episode we looked at refining resources. We looked at gathering resources, we looked at the hand tools and stuff. So you know now how to gather the resources. So we'll skip over that and now go straight to building. First thing you need to do obviously is gather all the resources. And if you need to know what resources you require, you need to look in the G menu. You can hover over the required item. We're going to focus on a light armor block, and that requires, if you look now, when you mouse over it, over here, and you can click it to highlight it, it tells you require 25 steel plates. Okay, so you require 25 steel plates in order to build this block. Okay, so now what you need to do is go into the assembler, which is here. Remember, this is all set up for automation on one of the starting areas, so I will show you how to get this all up together eventually, and I will keep mentioning that as we go. You walk up to the highlight. If you look, you can see that panels, as you get close to them, some of them actually highlight. Okay, so this is the assembly. You want to highlight a panel and press the K button, and this again is the K menu, same as the G menu, not very inventive. Press K to open it. However, you can't just press K out in the middle of nowhere because you are not connected to any grid, and it will just show your inventory. Okay, so this menu will change when you are, depending on which grid you are attached to. Okay, so on the left hand panel is a list of all of the blocks that you can, because when you're you can change. When you open the K menu, you're in the control panel, which we'll go through these in a minute. Down the left hand side here is all of the blocks that you can change. Okay, you can do stuff too. In the center is what you can do. You can turn them off, you can have them listed, not listed. Later on, with the more complicated blocks, you can have reactions and interactions and programmed responses and stuff like that with the more complicated blocks. And to do those, you would need to be in this section here. On the right hand side here is all the block information. So this is your assembler, no upgrades, modules used, slots. Productivity is 100%, power is 100%. It requires X amount of power, and it's got crap loads for the input, right, when it's working. These are ownership. By clicking on these, you can tell it who owns this block, and in multiplayer and factions, which we'll talk about in a minute, that's very important. And this area here is the grouping blocks. Again, I'll talk about that. That's an advanced technique, which I'll talk about later. It allows you to control multiple blocks in here, in the center area, by having them grouped together. Okay, so when you open up the terminal in K, you have this drop-down block here and remote access. Forget those are advanced. You don't need to worry about those for now. But you do have 7 tabs. The first tab, as you can see there, is the inventory tab, and this allows you to see all the inventories of connected. Over here you can change between your personal inventory and connected inventories. You can have both connected inventories, and you can move things between inventories and so on. So this is all the inventories of all the blocks connected to the grid that you're looking at. Okay, the control panel is we've just been through. Down here is all the blocks that you have access to. Here is what you can do with them, and here is further information and ownership. Production allows you to turn ingots from the refinery into component parts. That's going to be the focus of our video for the first half anyway. We'll come back to that in a minute. Info. Now here this tells you kind of information that you need to know, what sorts of things are attached to it, how heavy it is, how many blocks, and all that kind of information. You can name the grid here in grid name over here on the right, and you can convert it to a ship and so on, and convert it to a station. Now those are advanced things that you probably don't want to be messing with until later on. In the center here there are some different options which allow you to see things slightly differently when you're building, and it does help you. The most important one you're probably going to use more often than not is show center of mass. That only really is important when you're on planets. We'll look at that later. The gravity range speaks for itself. Sensor field, so you can have sensors, and when you approach the sensor, it will tell one of the blocks to do something. For instance, you could have a sensor on a door. When you go close to the door, it will automatically open the door. But then you can tell have this selected, and it show you the range of that sensor when you can adjust it, etc., etc. Antenna range and grid pivot and things like that. Okay, so all these just show you different types of information that you won't use all the time. This is the factions tab. In here we've got space pirates. You'll always have space pirates. Anybody to join, you can create a faction here. You can select a faction and declare war, propose peace, join that faction if they allow you. On multiplayer servers and stuff, they don't allow everybody. You can create your own faction and people can join it. So if you're on a multiplayer game, all your friends join the faction, and the ownership, of which we spoke about earlier here in the control panel, comes into play when you have more people, because if they're in the same faction you can share that block with them, and then they can have access to it. Okay, comms is just chat history and some faction announcements and stuff in here. I very rarely use this screen. And then on the last one is GPS. This is very important. You can mark any point in Space Engineers with a GPS marker. You can literally come down here, because on this side, the left is your list of GPSs, and you can go from current position. Okay, click that, and then you can say show on HUD and always visible. This gives you can name it. So if you found a really load of uranium, you can name it uranium. A description of current position, or you can put some other description in there, and that tells you the coordinates. Now if I go over here, you can see that blue icon, that now I'm changing the distance to it. No matter where I go, I can see that icon. That's a GPS coordinate. Okay, it's different from an antenna, because an antenna has a certain range and can only be seen as powered, etc., and within range. A GPS can be seen from anywhere, but you need to have been there in order to drop the GPS. Okay. The other part of GPS, you can copy to clipboard. So we could say copy to clipboard there, and then you can place that into chat with Control V, like so, and then anybody else that opens up there that has access to that, so your faction or whatever, whichever chat you put it in, anybody else can open that up, and then they'll have a grayed out version. Once they click on it, they save that GPS. But trust me, space is massive, okay, and you will use a lot of GPS points. Okay, so just get used to those. GPS is very important, and I will come back to marking that later on in other videos, but that's an introduction to tell you what it is. Okay, so we are only really concerned with the production tab, so let's go to the production tab. Again, you go to the assembler or the port that's highlighted, you press K and it brings up this menu. We go to production, Okay, and then in production, now there's a lot of stuff going on here as well. You have 4 icons below this word blueprints here. Blueprints of whichever thing it is. From left to right, you have large blocks. This will produce all of the required components for a large block. Small block, same thing. All the components for a small block. Components, this allows you to queue up individual component parts. And then there's tools. All of the tools and weapons that a player will require. Also in here are your gas bowls. Okay? So, we're going to go to a large grid. And we are going to look now at the iron block, which is this one here. Okay, by looking at that, we can tell that this requires 175 ingots. Okay, so we need to put 175 ingots into the refinery, into the assembler. If it's standalone, we'll need to manually get the ingots and put them in. If, like this, it's set up for automation, it will automatically pull them in. Okay. Before I go into that, there is one other set of points you need to know, a set of keys. Now, on the component tab, where you can queue up individual items, if you left click once, it will add 1 to the queue. If you control click, it will add 10 of them to the queue. If you shift click, it will add 100. And if you control shift click, it will add 1000. Sorry about my phone. Low. Okay, I'm going to die again, so I need to quickly resort myself out because this is survival and it's important. I'll show you what all that is about later on. Now, we are going to look at the light block. As we said, we need 175 ingots. So let's put 175 ingots in there. We go into the K menu as we did before. We find inventory for the assembler, and if we look here, this is assembler 1, and this is the item in. So these are the ingots. Okay, you can see from the ingots display there, that's where we drag and drop the 175 iron ingots. Let's take those out because we don't need those. Down here is the output. So this is where it's produced. So if we look at the refinery, it's the opposite way around. They've got the input is the rocks and the ore, and the output is the ingots. Okay? So looking at that, the ingots are the ingot stack icons. You can just put them in there. Go back now to the production tab. Okay, and once all of the required resources are in the assembler, you come back to here and you just click once on the large armor block. You'll see a certain few things happen rather quickly once you press this. Okay, you will see over on the right hand side here the production queue. It will queue up 25 steel plates, and then it will put them out here in the inventory display here. Point to note, this is not the inventory. You cannot take things from this screen here. It's just a display. You will need to use the inventory button down here or up there, or the control panel is also there, but you need to go to the inventory. Okay, first thing you do is then click on, and you can see the numbers going down in the queue and it's going up in the inventory display. So it's now producing all of those plates for us. Done. We now go to the inventory, which is here, and we can see, as we said before, the ingots go in there and the output comes there. We can now drag that across to our inventory, and we are carrying enough materials to build a single light armor block. So what we do is we press the G menu, we come out of the K menu, escape to come out of there, we open the G menu and we drag the light armor block down onto our bar, as we discussed earlier. Now, you see this ghost in front of me, ghost image. If the outline is red, it cannot be placed. If it is green, it can be placed. So once you find a placement that will work, left click on your block there on the ground, and it will place a frame for that block that you require. You must now complete the building of this block. To do so, you must ensure that you have all the items in your inventory, which we know we do have, and you must produce your welder. We already know how to put that onto the toolbar and select it, because that was in the previous video. Then we move to touching distance, and you can see now that a new little menu comes up on the right there. It's 0% complete, and it tells you it needs still plates, right? Press and hold on your welder. You can see that progress goes up, and it's finished. Done, completed. You saw the different build phases, and when it reaches 100%, it is now complete. That block is finished, done. So there you are. You can do it. You've just built your first block in Space Engineers. And in essence, you have learned Space Engineers. Okay? You have to gather resources, you have to process them and refine them, and then you change them into components, and you use those said components to make blocks. However, there are a lot more skills that you're going to require to continue your journey. But for now, you have learned to produce components, how to build a block, and all the things preceding this video. You are ready now to start learning more advanced techniques, a little bit more about the actual gameplay. So for that, I will see you guys in the next one. Big love from the Big Brit. Take care and ta-da.